The global economy exists on a razor's edge, tethered to a 21-mile-wide strip of water where the world breathes or suffocates. For 40 years, the Strait of Hormuz has been a gun held to the head of the West, a geographic choke point leveraged by Tehran to offset its conventional weakness. But the era of Iranian asymmetric blackmail is over. As American carrier strike groups converge and a massive reopening operation begins, the myth of the uncrossable threshold is being dismantled by cold, hard power. To understand the magnitude of this shift, one must look past the headlines and into the brutal, unforgiving reality of geography. The Strait of Hormuz is not merely a shipping lane. It is a tactical theater that favors the insurgent and the asymmetric actor. On the northern shore lies the jagged, mountainous coastline of Iran, a natural fortress of limestone and hidden coves. To the south lies the Musandam Peninsula, an Omani enclave that creates a natural constriction. In between, the deep water channels, the only paths capable of carrying the world's supertankers, are narrow enough to be monitored by a pair of binoculars from the shore. For 4 decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, has mastered this space. They didn't build a blue water navy to challenge the Americans on the open ocean. Instead, they built a mosquito fleet, thousands of fast attack craft, semi-submersibles, and suicide drones designed to swarm and overwhelm. This was the Fortress Hormuz doctrine. It was built on the premise that the United States, despite its overwhelming carrier power, could not operate in such a confined space without taking catastrophic losses. The Iranians gambled that the American public would never accept the sight of a billion-dollar destroyer being sunk by a fleet of fiberglass motorboats. For years, this gamble paid off. The United States operated with a posture of cautious deterrence, often allowing Iranian provocations to go unanswered to avoid a spiral of escalation that could spike oil prices to $200 a barrel. But the strategic environment has changed. The American shift toward energy independence, combined with the rise of peer competitors in the Indo-Pacific, has altered the cost-benefit analysis in Washington. The Hormuz veto is no longer a price the United States is willing to pay. The current massive reopening operation is the physical manifestation of this new reality. It is a transition from freedom of navigation operations, which are essentially symbolic protests, to a posture of forceful imposition. The Americans are no longer asking for the lanes to remain open. They are occupying the lanes with a density of firepower that renders Iranian interference impossible. This is not about diplomacy. It is about the cold application of force to secure the global commons. The geography of the strait itself is a study in tactical complexity. The shipping lanes, each only 2 miles wide, are bordered by shallow waters that are a nightmare for large, deep draft warships. Iran has utilized these shallows to plant vast fields of sophisticated bottom-dwelling mines, some designed to be triggered by the specific acoustic signature of an American destroyer. To counter this, the United States has deployed a multi-layered mine countermeasure task force that operates in the shadow of the carrier's air wing. This is the first time we are seeing the full integration of the littoral combat ship's mine warfare package in a contested environment. These ships, often criticized in peacetime, are now proving their worth as high-speed nodes in a larger sweeping operation. They work in tandem with MH-53EC Dragon helicopters and specialized underwater drones to clear a path through the Iranian minefields. This is a slow, methodical process, but it is being done under a total air supremacy umbrella that prevents Iranian aircraft or drones from interfering. The logistics of this operation are equally staggering. It begins with the deployment of the Fifth Fleet's unmanned integrated architecture. For the first time in history, the United States is not relying solely on manned hulls to police the strait. Task Force 59 has deployed a persistent screen of Saildrone Explorers and Mantas-T 12 unmanned surface vessels. These are the eyes that never blink. They sit in the water, virtually invisible to radar, feeding a constant stream of high-resolution data into an AI-driven kill web. In the old era, the IRGC could hide their movements among the thousands of civilian dhows and fishing boats that ply these waters. That era is dead. Every hull in the strait is now tracked, categorized, and assigned a threat profile in real time. If a fast attack craft leaves the port of Bandar Abbas, it is flagged before it even clears the breakwater. This is the first layer of the new American power, the total elimination of the element of surprise. But surveillance is only the prelude. Behind the drones sit the heavy hitters, the Aegis-equipped destroyers, and the carrier strike groups. The current posture involves a continuous presence within the strait itself, a move that was previously considered too risky. By positioning Arleigh Burke-class destroyers directly in the choke point, backed by the enormous sensor reach of the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, the U.S. has created a bubble of denial. They have turned the IRGC's A2AD strategy on its head. It is now the Iranians who are denied access to their own coastal waters. The geography that once protected them, the islands of Qeshm, Hormuz, and the Tums, is now being treated as a series of targets. Every missile battery and radar station on those islands is currently locked on by American precision munitions. The logic of great power realism is being applied with surgical precision. If you threaten the global commons, your ability to reach those commons will be systematically erased. The deployment of the Wasp-class amphibious assault ships carrying F-35B Lightning II fighters adds a third dimension to this dominance. These stealth jets can operate from short runways or small decks, providing a persistent overhead presence that the Iranians cannot track. They are flying sorties over the strait, not to bomb targets, but to gather electronic intelligence and provide a psychological deterrent. The message to the IRGC is clear. We are here, we see everything, and we can strike before you even know we are in the area. This is the reality of modern maritime power. It is no longer about having the biggest guns, but about having the most integrated network. The Strait of Hormuz is becoming the world's most heavily monitored piece of water, and every bit of that data is owned and controlled by the United States. The Iranian regime has long relied on the idea of strategic depth. They believe that because they sit on the northern shore of the Gulf, they have an inherent advantage. They thought they could retreat into their mountain bunkers and wait for the Americans to tire. But in the age of the long-range standoff strike, geography is no longer a shield. The U.S. has positioned Tomahawk-equipped submarines in the Arabian Sea, capable of hitting targets deep within the Iranian interior if the IRGC attempts to escalate. This creates a vertical escalation ladder that Iran simply cannot climb. If they attack a tanker in the strait, the response may not come in the water. It may come from 100 miles away, hitting the command and control centers that authorize the attack. This is the definition of escalation dominance. The U.S. is signaling that it is prepared to broaden the conflict if the Iranians do not yield. The shadow of the Iranian threat has long paralyzed global energy markets, but that shadow is now being chased away by the blinding light of American naval supremacy. We are witnessing the collapse of a 40-year-old deterrence framework, replaced by a ruthless imposition of maritime order that leaves no room for ambiguity. The question is no longer whether the strait can be closed, but who truly dictates the logic of the water. As the operation moves into its second phase, the focus shifts from surveillance to the tactical dismantling of the Iranian command structure. This is where the logic of escalation becomes a weapon in itself. The United States has achieved this through a revolution in electronic warfare. In the opening hours of the reopening operation, the IRGC's coastal defense network was subjected to a digital blockade. Using the EA-18G Growlers ALQ-218 tactical jamming receivers, the U.S. has effectively severed the link between Iranian command centers and their shore-based missile batteries. An anti-ship cruise missile is only dangerous if it can find its target. By flooding the frequency bands used by Iranian radar, the U.S. has turned Tehran's Silkworm and newer missiles into blind, unguided rockets. This is not just a tactical win. It is a strategic neutralization of Iran's most potent conventional weapon. This technological overmatch has profound psychological consequences for the IRGC leadership. Their swarm doctrine relies on the coordination of hundreds of small boats acting in unison. But coordination requires communication. When the American electronic warfare umbrella opens, those boats lose contact with each other and their commanders. They become isolated targets in a high-threat environment. The IRGC Navy, which prides itself on its revolutionary zeal and unconventional tactics, is finding that zeal is a poor substitute for a functioning data link. The Mosquito fleet is being swatted by an invisible hand. This is not a war of attrition. It is a war of system-wide collapse. The Americans are not looking to sink every Iranian boat. They are looking to break the brain of the Iranian naval machine. Furthermore, the U.S. has integrated distributed lethality into the operation. This means that the offensive power of the fleet is no longer concentrated in a single carrier. Every vessel in the theater, from the smallest patrol boat to the largest supply ship, is now a sensor and a shooter. The deployment of the Standard Missile 6, or SM-6, has been a game changer. These missiles can engage surface targets, cruise missiles, and even ballistic missiles at ranges that keep the American ships well outside the kill zone of Iranian coastal batteries. By utilizing forward pass targeting, an unmanned drone can spot an Iranian target, and a destroyer 100 miles away can neutralize it. This decouples the shooter from the sensor, making the American fleet a ghost-like presence that strikes from over the horizon. The Iranians are finding themselves in a fight where they cannot even see the enemy that is destroying them. Tehran's response to this has been a mixture of frantic rhetoric and tactical paralysis. They are trapped in a geographic cage of their own making. If they attempt a full-scale swarm, they risk the total destruction of their naval assets in a matter of hours. This would not just be a military defeat. It would be a humiliation for the Islamic Republic, stripping it of its status as a regional power. If they do nothing, their primary lever of global influence, the ability to hold the global economy hostage, evaporates. This is the realist trap. Iran's power was always based on the perception of their ability to close the strait. Once the United States proves that the strait can be kept open through sheer force, that perception vanishes, and with it, Iran's status as a regional hegemon. The logic of escalation is now entirely in Washington's hands. They are the ones who decide the tempo of the operation. They are the ones who decide the rules of the road. The U.S. has also deployed its most advanced submarine assets into the region, specifically the Ohio-class guided missile submarines. These vessels, each carrying up to 154 Tomahawk missiles, provide a massive, stealthy strike capability that can be unleashed at a moment's notice. They sit in the deep waters outside the strait, acting as a silent hammer. If Iran were to launch a ballistic missile toward an American base or a regional ally, these submarines could respond with a saturation strike that would overwhelm any Iranian air defenses. This is the ultimate insurance policy. It ensures that the reopening operation cannot be derailed by a sudden Iranian escalation. The American posture is one of total spectrum dominance from the seabed to the stratosphere. Every possible avenue of Iranian resistance has been anticipated and countered. The logistical depth of the American operation also ensures its sustainability. This is not a one-off transit or a temporary show of force. The U.S. is establishing a hardened corridor. They are moving in mobile sea bases, such as the USS Lewis B. Puller, which are massive floating platforms that can support helicopter operations, drone launches, and special forces without needing a land-based port. This reduces the vulnerability to Iranian short-range ballistic missiles that could target traditional bases on land. By moving the base to the water, the U.S. has neutralized the geographic advantage of Iran's inland missile silos. The supply chain for the fleet is being secured by a constant aerial bridge of C-2 Greyhounds and V-22 Ospreys, ensuring that the reopening force can stay on station indefinitely. This is a message of permanence. The Americans aren't just clearing the path. They are moving in and changing the locks on the most important gate in the world. As the operation continues, the United States is also engaging in a massive psychological warfare campaign. They are broadcasting the feed from their surveillance drones directly to the Iranian military's own communication channels, showing them exactly what the Americans see. This is designed to sow doubt and discord within the ranks of the IRGC. If an Iranian commander knows that an American drone is watching his every move and that an American destroyer has a missile locked onto his position, his willingness to engage in a suicidal swarm attack diminishes rapidly. Realism is not just about physical force. It is about the perception of force. By demonstrating total transparency and total dominance, the U.S. is winning the battle for the Strait without having to fire a shot. The Iranians are being forced to accept a new reality. Their 40-year reign of terror in the Gulf is over. The strategic pivot is now complete, as the fortress that Iran spent decades building has been turned into a cage by the sheer weight of American industrial and technological power. The levers of regional blackmail have snapped under the pressure of a superpower that has decided to stop playing by the old rules. Now, we must look at the wreckage of the old order and the birth of a new enforced reality. The final act of this strategic drama is the regional realignment. In the world of hard realism, power abhors a vacuum. As Iranian influence in the Strait of Hormuz recedes, the regional balance of power is being fundamentally recalibrated. For the Gulf monarchies, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, this operation is the ultimate security guarantee. For years, these states have lived in the shadow of Iranian proxy warfare and the threat of a maritime blockade that could bankrupt their economies. The massive reopening operation has proven that the American security umbrella is not only functional but dominant. This will lead to a more assertive posture from Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. They no longer have to fear the Hormuz veto when conducting their own regional policies. We are seeing the birth of a post-Hormuz Middle East where the flow of energy is secured by a high-tech multinational coalition led by Washington. The global implications are even more profound. The Hormuz model is now the blueprint for how the United States will handle other contested choke points, most notably the South China Sea. Beijing is watching this operation with intense scrutiny. They are seeing the clinical dismantling of a sophisticated A2AD network. They are seeing the effectiveness of unmanned systems and integrated electronic warfare. The lesson for China is clear. Geographic proximity is no longer a guarantee of tactical success against a superpower that can master the electromagnetic and autonomous domains. The great power calculus has shifted. The United States has demonstrated that it can project power into the most contested nearshore environments and prevail. This reestablishes the global commons as a space under American management, a massive blow to the multipolar aspirations of the revisionist powers. For Iran, the strategic consequences are catastrophic. Their forward defense doctrine has been stripped of its most potent weapon. Without the ability to threaten the Strait, Iran's leverage in nuclear negotiations, its influence in Iraq and Yemen, and its status as a regional heavyweight are all diminished. They are being forced back into their own borders, their asymmetric advantages neutralized by integrated power. The cost of their defiance has been the loss of their most strategic asset. In the cold language of realism, they have been outplayed and outgunned. The Strait of Hormuz, once a symbol of Iranian defiance, is now a monument to American resilience and technological overmatch. The IRGC, which once claimed to be the masters of the Gulf, are now relegated to watching from the shore as the world's commerce flows past them, protected by the very power they sought to exclude. The operation also marks the end of the tanker war era of naval thinking. We have moved past the age of simple mines and deck guns. We are in the era of algorithmic warfare. The reopening of the Strait was not won by a single heroic battle, but by the accumulation of thousands of data points, the seamless integration of sensors, and the relentless application of superior logistics. The U.S. Navy has proven that it can operate in a glass house, a narrow, exposed waterway, and still remain the stone thrower. The flow of oil continues, the prices stabilize, and the global order remains intact. But underneath that stability is a new hard reality. The Strait of Hormuz is now a managed waterway, and the manager is the United States Navy. This is the new maritime Pax Americana, enforced not by treaty, but by the undeniable presence of carrier strike groups and autonomous kill webs. The economic impact of this operation cannot be overstated. By removing the Hormuz risk, the United States has effectively lowered the cost of energy for the entire planet. The war premium that has long been baked into the price of Brent crude is being liquidated. This provides a massive boost to the global economy and further consolidates American leadership. The message to the world is that the United States is the only power capable of securing the vital arteries of global trade. This reinforces the dollar's role as the global reserve currency and ensures that the world's energy markets remain denominated in the currency of the power that secures the lanes. The reopening of Hormuz is not just a military victory, it is a profound economic and geopolitical triumph that will resonate for decades as the sun sets over the limestone cliffs of the Musandam. The American fleet remains on station. Their radars are humming, their drones are circling, and their missiles are ready. The reopening is complete, but the occupation of the choke point has just begun. The world may breathe a sigh of relief as the tankers pass through safely, but for those who study the logic of power, the message is clear. The era of the regional spoiler is over. The hegemon has returned to the gate, and this time the gate will stay open. The map of the Middle East hasn't just been redrawn, it has been reinforced with steel and silicon, ensuring that the lifeblood of the global economy remains beyond the reach of those who would seek to choke it. The final question is, what comes next? A power like Iran, when stripped of its primary weapon, will look for new ways to strike. But the U.S. has already anticipated this. They are building a regional air defense network that integrates the sensors of Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, creating a shield that stretches from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. This is the ultimate goal, a regional architecture of security that makes Iranian aggression obsolete. The massive reopening operation was the first step in this grand strategy. It was the moment when the United States decided to stop reacting to the Iranian threat and start erasing it. The logic of power has spoken, and for the first time in a generation, the Strait of Hormuz is truly open, not because of diplomacy, but because no one is left with the strength to close it. This is the world as it is, a world where geography still matters, but where power calculated, integrated, and relentless matters more. The game of shadows is over, the board has been cleared, and the pieces that remain are all under the watchful eye of a hegemon that has rediscovered its will to lead. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer a point of contention. It is a demonstration of the enduring nature of great power politics. In the end, the logic of the water is simple. It belongs to whoever has the power to take it and the will to keep it. The United States has both. The fortress has fallen, the cage is locked, and the world moves on, secured by the cold, hard reality of American steel. The era of maritime blackmail has been buried in the depths of the Persian Gulf, replaced by a strategic architecture that leaves no room for regional defiance. As the tankers move through the strait with an impunity not seen in decades, the global order has been reminded that the arteries of trade are only as free as the power that protects them. The reopening of Hormuz is not just an end to a crisis, but the beginning of a new chapter where the dictates of the hegemon are absolute